Yeah, that'll do. Well, what an intro. What a start. What a break. What a day. What a week. How are you, friends? Everything seems to be up and running. I shall jump straight into tonight's disquisition. Should there be no minor hiccups or infarctions along the way, tonight is a collection of thoughts, an article from Professor Deason I'd like to share with you. And hopefully a collage of and a string of events that may all tie in together. Us, John. Us, good to see you. A string of events that might just lead us off into an outro piece from the good Tom Barry. Something to titivate for you for towards the very end. We'll sign off with that. But hopefully this string of consciousness will just lead us on that way. So everything about last week and everything going forward, sharing my thoughts with you on this. Let me just apologise for missing yesterday morning's stream. Through the dizzy heights of self-employment, the roller coaster ride that is self-employment. My brakes were released unbeknownst to myself, and so I was busy doing a little bit of a backstroke, but managed to get that organised out. So I had to make up for lost time, as it were, and that's hence why I had to miss out on Saturday. But here we are, Sunday service at 6. I like the flavour of it. I like the vibe. I like how things are going. How are things with you? Thank you for your little comments on yesterday as well. Yeah, I thought I'd share. That was an old photograph. It wasn't what I was doing yesterday, but it was an old photograph, and I thought it was a cheeky representation. I don't mind. No ego here. TT, you got to mention. Listen to me, Kenneth. You read my mind. Bear with me, will you? Bear with me, Kenneth. Trying to jump ahead there and spoil the show. I'm ahead of you, trying to be ahead of me. John says this on Telegram. Not just yet. I do have, actually, you just reminded me there, I have Telegram cranked up here because this is the experimental stage, and I shall deal with it now, President. I'm going to start up the Telegram and it won't interfere. That's on the Grand Torino channel. There's a link for it in the description box in this broadcast or in the other broadcasts. If you jump down there, you'll see a link there if you want to jump in, or you want to try and jump in if you're on Telegram. I have just waiting for Telegram to connect here on that main channel there anyway. So that is booming away there. I'll stick the video on there as well. It's not too bad. I think it's reversed. But anyway, Telegram is up and running on the main channel there. I'll have a check-in with it towards the end of the show. See if anybody's there. We'll say hello to you if you're in there. Just hang about and wait for me. Let me drop that down there. Okay. So Kenneth brought up I'm gonna bring it into. I'm gonna let it speak for itself. Anyway, the first on the train of thoughts is an alt thing in academia. It's the assault on academia, the assault on the institutions, all the rhetoric that's coming out, particularly today as well. Over the weekend, everything seems to pop out. Unfortunate, because I still do have to address it, and I'm talking about a declaration made by people that we know, and I will remind you to be aware that there will be euphemisms, and not direct correlation, stuff like that. There's always grandstanding rhetoric from me here as well, but the emphasis is on you to bring it together as well, because I can't really ascribe it. Things are getting very, very spicy. They're getting very spicy as well, so it's right to be cautious. And I think this type of guerrilla streaming kind of ties in with tonight's title tonight as well. This kind of guerrilla streaming, I know for our friends over in the United States, the evening suits best because it's at the early hours of the morning when we do a Saturday morning show. So there could be a space for a Sunday at 6 and a Saturday at 9, not the swap shop. And we work on that title as well as we go forward, because it gets a bit boring and blasé, has many difficult connotations wrapped up in it as well. Saoirse Lynn also joining in the house. Hopefully, nobody's giving me a 5x5. I'm presuming all is coming through well on your end. I won't fluff around too much on the technical issues. First two things I want to address to remind me as well, just that I am aware, and just to make you aware of the banning of Keith Woods as well. Keith put a broadcast out on Twitter. I don't have the title there as well. I encourage you to go over to his Twitter channel. And has been removed from the Stripe financial platform there. Like many of us have gone through the stigma for speaking out. Access to payment platforms is being denied, and according to Keith in his Twitter post there, some 95% of his earnings, that's the way you have to look at it, 95% of his earnings Sheepdog there telling me that we are muted. Unmute. My apologies there. Yeah, I'm there now. Thanks for that. Thanks for that, Gringo. That just reminds me, good dog, if you're watching in there as well. I haven't forgotten, haven't heard, haven't followed up as well. Hope you're doing okay. If you do see a Sheepdog in the chat, do give me a heads up there. Yeah, so the Keith Woods banning as well, that play on pivotal individuals or people with specific platforms or draw or an audience, you're not putting into the same framework, but he's on the same sort of elevation and path where there's Charlie Kirk and stuff like that. So he puts himself into the realm as well. So if you can support Keith, whether you agree with his positions, very well educated, very lucid and erudite speaker and thinker, very much needed over here as well. And it just shows you how effective he is, that to such an extent that he is being denied the services from these platforms, and this again is the tactic. It's not freedom of speech, it's not restriction of your freedom of speech, it's your freedom of reach, and they're doing it through the back door. People being denied banking services and platforms like this. It's the slow crush. Like we always said way back in the many years of streams gone by, separate payment systems, pretty much what but the Russians and the Chinese are doing up now, setting up the multipolar world. Let's touch a little bit on topical before I bring up a few of the posts in relation to the kind of the war situation that's going on. It's very spicy that I'm reading it on people that I'm paying attention to as well. But one of the main points that I would bring to your attention is that the gas reserves, the LPG gas reserves here in Europe are currently sitting at some 58% and haven't been topped up. So you can understand where I'm going with this. Normally in and around at this time, as we head into the winter months, and we've had a very tough summer sort of season there as well, and a high energy output. Now we will say we don't have many air cons, but I'm sure there's many systems that are out there, many other institutional systems that the taxpayers paying for, like hospitals, public service, public sector, office spaces and all that. They'll all have their air conditioners and air cons wrapped up. So the energy usage either way was up high. And given that the reserves are now standing, European reserves at 58%, normally situation, as I'm reliably informed, sitting at 75%. At this time of year, heading into winter, and they should be coming up, to near up 98, 90% full. So with that scarcity in the resources and no allocation of it being replenished at any time soon with the conditions, we've said it in many streams, and I know I'm speaking to the choir again for the casual viewer or listener coming in, energy prices are going to rise drastically again. I don't know what's happening today. I don't know if there was an event happening on today because I've been pretty obscure and staying out of the way. But I think from what I'm gathering, the transportation system and the farmers, again, looking for a decrease in the taxation in the fuel prices over here, asking the government to reduce them on costs, asking the system that actively wants to destroy them to reduce the burden on them, and the system wants nothing more to increase the burden on you to destroy your business, removing the independent means of production. So asking the system, I'll just say asking the system to give you 5 or 10% reduction in fuel price to alleviate it. And then as you see, transport went off and got their 5% and said, good luck to everybody else, we're sorted. And now it's coming back around again. There will be no long-term reprieve from the 1/5, 2/5 now. If the Saudi Arabian situation deteriorates and Iran takes out more infrastructure over in Saudi Arabia, we could be without 2/5 of global fuel or energy supplies, gas, diesel oil, and the rest. So the trajectory being that energy prices are going to increase, that's a given. Reducing the taxation will go some of the way, but then that is government spending, and it's tied into, well, if you have to rob Peter to pay Paul, you're going to have to deny other people's services for that funding to be alleviated in the fuel price. So they can't magically produce that money. They're going to have to take it away from the spending, and that's going to be the innocent. That's going to be the elderly, first of all, care services. So that's where they're going to take it from as well. Not the welfare budget, not the welfare stack. Anyway, I think that kind of covers it well. So just be mindful as well of the increase. As we see the fuel pumps now starting to creep back up again, there might be a short-term reprieve when they do come to it after elongating it. But the war is creeping on, and the rhetoric from European leaders is pushing Russia into a red line position. And I've already mentioned it to you, to the targets that have been specifically mentioned. It's going to be either over in France and Germany primarily. And I think a lot rests on the Russian decision. If you're paying attention to the elections that will be happening in Germany next month, and given whatever the situation or the results of those elections in Germany in those specific regions that are coming up, and how the AfD reports, because there's so much rhetoric coming out in AfD for AfD to be banned outright. I mean, it's complete censorship. It's complete the system running scared. But there's such a huge draw. So what I'm saying by that is, if the AfD do score well and do high, and which everybody fully expects them to do, without major shenanigans, or like we remember the last election when 7 members of the AfD mysteriously passed away 24 hours before the election itself. Those things kind of crack on. That similar sort of thing. But what I'll say to you then is, if the AfD do rise, it might alleviate that situation with the Russians, because the Russians will see clear that if the AfD or if a nationalist government gets in one of those huge economic engines, European economic engines, primarily Germany, as it goes through its deindustrialization, it's not going to be the behemoth that it once was. You understand what's going on, that all production is being shipped out to China, and Germany is deindustrializing and is now dipping into borrowed funds, where it used to always rely on its collective wealth that it generated itself and its savings. It was always financially secure. That was the big prop up. But now it's dipping into credit and it's going down the same route. So it's forestalling the inevitable of where we are and what we're about here, which is importing mass transactional units, mass importation, not along with the size or the collateral damage as the system sees it, to destroy the homogeneity or the functionality of the society, but to cripple its economic, to bring in such distress that it will mask, if and when civil war is declared, that it will mask the financial disaster that they have long anticipated for and are preparing for, hence the glut on splashing our cash whichever way it is, because the system's going to crash. The American debt, 38 trillions, is unsustainable, and the petrodollar is losing its grasp as the multipolar, is that how they describe it? Multipolar into transactions, because they've learned that the Europeans will confiscate the wealth. The Russians had 300 billion of their securities taken from Swiss banks or from European banks and are still being withheld, and were then fed to Ukraine to be used to buy weapons to be used against them. So they have come up with their own payment system and are not excluding Europe, but just waiting for honest actors. I've swiveled off on the point. But if the AfD do ascend and Russia realise that honest actors in a nationalist government get into place, it might take the pressure off Russia to react to these provocations and escalations from our dimwits in Europe. But I digress. Let's jump into something there. That was a bit of a spiel, wasn't it? But I just thought I'd bring you up to date in this. So Nick Dixon, again, just touching on something topical. I'm not going to mention it specific, but it's the professorship in Cambridge University and the whole implosion that's going over there. I'm following Jared Casey. I believe it's Professor Jared Casey over here on Twitter. And he brings, I'm very well aware of the assault on academia and the assault on all the institutions, but he keeps me abreast for me on Twitter about what's happening. But I think he noticed here as well, just during the calamitous and all the events that's happening over with Cambridge, Nick Dixon here kind of pins out from, that's what I wanted to draw from it here, and from all the other posts that I have here up with you, it's just to draw your attention to these places, to these pieces of information, to place them so that you can navigate future events coming up, within a degree of certainty. All this talk about Jason RDA, but people still don't realise that what DEI has done, DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, the buzzwords, the SDGs, all the WEF format, that even if you are not attached to them in any way, shape or form, if you espouse that rhetoric and use those terms, that you will be given a nudge and a wink to beneficial credit lines. That's the enticement to it. Active, like NGOs, we'll touch on them. Number one, it has destroyed millions of lives. They're all white men, so no one cares. Number two, it has destroyed entire industries, even art forms, potentially forever. There's no sign that literature, for example, is coming back from the assault of DEI and the related ideological impositions upon content, sensitivity readers, and general idiocy. Older authors like Ian McEwan and Don DeLillo still publish, but they are like the last elfish kings whose ilk we may never be seen again. Obviously, it's similar to the across all the arts, not to mention the many fields where DEI puts people in actual danger, like policing. We can see that there. Well, I won't extrapolate on it too much. You understand what it means by that. You may think Jason Arday is a joke, and it is to a degree, no pun intended, but DEI is synonymous with the collapse of the West. It is those strangulations on the institutions and those impositions that are put on those institutions to benefit the protected classes. And all our rhetoric here from any of our government ministers or any of the talking heads is in reference to those protected classes, and they use the angle of to gain the moral authority through quoting it's legal, it's legislative. We are bringing in the Genders Equality Act. You must comply, even though it's not biologically normative or anything else like that, but it's legal. And that's the reference that the route they take with you to browbeat you into submission. We will not fall for it. We refuse to fall for your idiocy and your labels anymore. Even though in this time, as the institution starts to stretch out its tentacles and strike at those heavy high achievers like Keith Woods and the rest of the nationalist movement throughout the European realms, Italy is starting to crumble. Liga starting to lose its grasp on the nationalist government over there in Italy as well, with a new sort of military man. I can't remember his name offhand. Maybe one of you in chat might remind me. I think it starts with an F. But a new branch of nationalist government espousing tougher rhetoric that La Liga were bringing in was under Salvini. But Meloni sort of took the place. She was a sort of a compromise. I think you remember when Salvini got into a place as the Secretary of State in Italy, and he arrested the pirate ship. It was the great wrath of all the institutions from WEF et al. Were collapsed upon him, and I think he was physically threatened. That's why 4 years of legislative warfare, and I think a kidnapped attempt on his child put a kibosh on that. But the rhetoric is coming in from this new Italian branch there. Just looking towards you, if anybody in chat has it. Finabalci, the new Italian leader. Anyway, he's gaining in the polls over there. So you can see where I'm seeing with you now. Germany is now capitulating to national AfD being the bigger draw and higher. The more incumbent parties, CDU and all the other Christian democratic parties, are sort of flailing at the whale because of the efficacy, the efficiency and the lethality of Alice Weidel and the ADF. She is a very competent speaker and a very competent leader, and that they seem to be doing and achieving great heights. Also, with Macron coming up to the last 1 month, 2 months of his tenureship, of his incumbency, has been nothing but a disaster for France and for the European Union at all, and has been the main driver for everything that's going on. I think he'll do the last big push to get as many weapons as he can, or as much money pushed in towards the sinkhole or the meat grinder of Ukraine. But his tenureship is up soon, and Marie Le Pen and that nationalist party are on the ascendancy over there as well. So all to play for still. What we have with the fiasco or the fandango of the restore reform sort of fracturing of the right again, what he says, she says, and again that the absolute aberration that is the Anne Whittaker murder trying to be swept under the counter for more left-wing violence. But it's a tangled web we weave, and it still dringles on. Jumping over to Jared here quickly. Jared Casey, who I mentioned to you earlier on as well, just today pointed out this one as well, and I thought I'd bring it to your attention in here into the Social, Personal and Health Education, the SPHE, for the senior cycle in Irish second level education contains this passage which purports to describe a time when, quote, women did not have equal rights, were not allowed to have careers and exist to support their husbands, performing thankless, challenging work to keep their homes running and children fed without any help, quote, thankless and without help. And I think he brings that up, part of the curriculum there for yourself to read. 2024, so the rise of the tradwife trend. This is now the new state's assault on these, what they say is the manosphere and tradwife influencers and all that sort of buzzwords. It's very much a deflection, very much projection as well. But they're trying to frame, I believe, the bad guys are the bad people, and everybody falls into these kind of umbrellas. But again, it's too, as we all understand, and you should understand, it is the slow creep back into the constitutional change to remove mothers from the constitution. They're now reframing these trad wife houses, or this trad wife sort of lifestyle. We'll be very cautious, but be mindful. That is the attack. It's the second assault. Failed the first time, and here they are creeping back in again to remove mother. For the gender affirming sort of ideology that comes into it. If we're not all male and we're not all biological females or males, then what are we? We'll be a bastardization or whatever fucking nefarious crap that they have in mind. Anyway, 2024 saw the rise of tradwife trend. The trend revolves around a married woman who embraces traditional gender roles, particularly focusing on homemaking and supporting her husband by raising the children, cooking, keeping the house clean, and keeping herself beautiful for her husband, the primary breadwinner. The tradwives often portray the image of a stress-free life because they have a man to provide for them financially. The tradwife trend has created lots of controversy because it often glorifies and romanticizes a time when women did not have equal rights. I'm not going to steer down that path, and I am a product, a late product of that time when it was just coming out of place, when the system tricked the woman to leave the household and join the workforce, so that they could double the tax take and remove guardianship over and remove parental rights, or weaken parental rights by having you both occupied being at work. We all understand economic. I digress. To finish it off, while the choice to embrace traditional gender roles is a personal one, the tradwife movement may undermine progress towards gender equality by suggesting women should stick to their gender role. Sorry, I should have had that up on stream for you there. As I was waffling, it's all about me. Just keep the camera on me. Why don't you? What's going on there in chat? Are you still with me? But Jared, like I said to you, Professor Casey just kind of keeps us abreast of the assault and the slow encryption of DEI, the SDG, and again, all things gender equality. The slippery slope, or the Pandora boxes that they kind of creep. But as it's framed it to you there as well, on the previous post there, it's the assault on the Constitution is the bigger prize that they're after. For why, we will have further streams, I'm sure, to inform ourselves of why. I want to read to you now this article here from Professor Deason and kind of round up and wrap up the time, a sort of a time frame as well. Professor Deason just runs, I'll just give you the title here. The EU has no plan if peace breaks out in the Ukraine. We'll go through that article there now in 1 second. But it's precisely this is the contention. Because of the Russian progress, the big cauldron, the capitulation of the Ukraine army, which they're even now, British papers reporting it now, that they are losing the war, that the fantastical figures that they've been producing, that the Russians are losing X, Y, and Z, and that they are taking down missiles. Russia has complete air superiority over the war zone. Complete air dominance, air superiority, as the Americans like to frame it over there as well. So it is a matter of time. It's tick-tock, tick-tock, tick-tock. But it's the amount of Ukrainian men that they can drag off the streets, like the 125 million that our government just gave over to the Ukrainians as well. Is that going to feed what do they call them? The trophy prize for collecting them at $8,000 a head for every man that what do they call them? Carpetbaggers. There's a specific term. Those days that are jackkneeing or jackbooting men off the streets and pulling them in. The terrible, distressing videos of men being removed from their families in front of their children's eyes, or from their wives, their partners, in front of their children, and the assault on them there and then. They're barely alive when they get to the barracks. Only then, probably, if they are not battered alive, and if they do manage to get through the torturous 2-week training camp that they're given, or if they don't survive that, where they will be also be positioned and what's the word? Offered for human trafficking and donation of their organs. The mass murder machine, 100%, Martine. Yeah, the meat grinder, absolute farce. Anyway, I'm trying not to be too specific. Stop leading me down your little dark thoughts there, Martine. 665. Well aware of what you're trying to do there. I wish we had another 100k, folks. Sure, hey, it's a nice and easy, comfortable thing. You know what I mean? Not too many eyes on here. You spread the word after the stream. We're all good here, you know what I mean? We're all good. If it happens, so be it. We'll take it as it. But as it stands now, quite comfortably here in the Guerrilla Tactic War Room. Are you with me, chat? Are you with me? Let's jump into Professor Deason's and we'll trundle along here. The EU has no plans if peace breaks out in Ukraine. Over the past, and I do encourage you, I'll throw up a link there. Did I keep the link? I'll throw up a link to Professor Deason. You can find him on Substack and also on Twitter X and his YouTube account as well, taken off. And he is one of a regular cohort of guests on the Duran with Alexander Mercurius et al. Over the past years, NATO has held, quote, peace summits to which Russia has not even been invited, where European leaders such as President Duda spoke about the peace in terms of breaking up Russia into smaller states. Now that NATO is clearly losing its proxy war, the EU demands an, quote, unconditional ceasefire. This is not a peace proposal, but an effort to further extend the war. An unconditional ceasefire is a conditionality for starting negotiations, which is intended to freeze a conflict that NATO is losing, giving it time to rearm, regroup, and even send in NATO troops as, quote, peacekeepers. Just checking in with you there. Why has the EU boycotted diplomacy for 4.5 years and continues to do so? And why will NATO not even take NATO expansion off the table in return for a ceasefire? Would it not be wise to discuss with the other side how we failed to establish a mutually acceptable pan-European security architecture after the Cold War, which has led us into this horrific war? The EU uses smears and censorship to prevent its own public from even discussing this matter, and it will certainly not be discussed with Russia. The EU cannot allow this war to end, as there is no plan for peace. Fighting with Ukrainians keeps the US in Europe, temporarily preserves European unity, protects an unpopular political elite from the rising opposition that seeks course correction, offers military Keynesian as an economic model for a deindustrializing Europe, weakens Russia as a strategic rival, and buys the European leaders time to prepare for a direct war with Russia. We've been saying that for a while now. We've been talking, all points are leading to them trying to escalate to full-on war to remain in power. A peace agreement would require European leaders to repay the funds they have seized and partly stolen from Russia, which they also used as collateral for loans to Ukraine. Victory would give the Europeans a strong US behind them and a battle-hardened Ukraine in front of them, while defeat would leave Europe without a clear role or relevance in a multipolar world. There is no plan for what to do when peace breaks out. I said, don't discover it. Don't forget to join Glenn Deason's Substack. Thank you for that, Glenn. The unconditional ceasefire without even discussing a political settlement and intensified deep strikes into Russia. I sort of lost my place there. Let me straight back. The European leaders rushed to Washington to insist that peace entails an unconditional ceasefire without ever discussing a political settlement and intensified deep strikes into Russia to sell the idea that Russia can be defeated. The European leaders were successful as the Trump administration began adopting the false narrative that Ukraine had, quote, turned the tide, while the Trump administration had initially aimed to either end the Ukraine war or outsource it to the Europeans. The proxy war in Ukraine is now Trump's war. If the goal was to help Ukraine then NATO would not have toppled the Ukrainian government in 2014 in an effort to pull Ukraine into the NATO orbit, and only a small minority of Ukrainians wanted. NATO would not have sabotaged the Minsk agreement between 2015 and 2022. NATO would have not pressured Zelensky to reverse his peace platform that won him the election in 2019. NATO would not have torpedoed the Istanbul Agreement in 2022, or at least NATO would have ended the war in November of 2022 on the recommendation of General Mark Milley when Ukraine was at its strongest. Instead, standing with Ukraine now entails deporting Ukrainian refugees and financing military recruiters to hunt Ukrainian men on the streets to send them to die in a war that Ukraine cannot possibly win. Proxy wars are ruthless as they use the proxy as cannon fodder, yet proxy wars are always sold to the public as being motivated by empathy and support for the proxy that is unnecessarily sacrificed. Yeah, very well written and put us into place. Oh, I'm after losing camera number 2 there. Let me hop back here and see if I can reset this and pop that there and then pop that back there. See what you get there. I'm back from outer space. So You can see great words there from Professor Deason as well. And I do encourage you to follow him as well to keep all things abreast. As I was saying to you, folks, time is pressing on where the Russians and the Russian people are putting more pressure onto the Putin administration to be more forceful and to directly end this war and to put it up to the Europeans who would keep funding the provocation and the onslaught and murder of Ukrainian citizens. And putting the whole of Europe and the whole, well, not that they're putting at enterprise, the whole European architecture now is capitulating and will fall. Once, I believe, if any of the nationalist governments get into place, one of the bigger economic powers, the whole place would kind of collapse. But I don't think Riedel and the AfD would want that as well, because for the system to absolutely collapse, it puts us all in jeopardy because our whole way of life changes. I think a more co-option or co-adoption of the European Union and steer it away to try and preserve the communication between countries, but that they will remain independent and sovereign in their decisions for themselves, but would cooperate as originally intended in the European economic bloc before it morphed into this authoritarian, militaristic sort of progressive liberalism ideology that it's pushing us, forcing us all to participate in. I will not bow. You will not bow. They shall not pass. By the mighty Greybeard. We jump on two little things. Try not to be too lighthearted about this thing because it's quite serious. During the week there, just by way of note, I'm not even going to read the article, just that we are keeping aware of it. Wexford girl 16 dies after collapsing while playing in a GAA final. Absolutely shocking stuff. Prayers offered up to her and her family and everyone affected. I know they're kind of meaningless in this situation. But that's, let me see, that's all we kind of have to say on that subject there, just to keep you abreast, that the excessive deaths amongst the youth and the increasing rises in aggressive turbo cancers now being found, colon cancers now being found in 9, 10 and 11-year-olds, also on the increase. I stand by and have stood by all the doctors that are being prosecuted by the Medical Council here in Ireland and throughout the rest of the world who offer up resistance to this and who have, well, hopefully one day we can, even with the Fauci situation and the pleading of the Fifth Amendment or the Fifth through 111, 112 answers, and still being defended by some lunatic lefts being blamed on the right, you know, like the Jason Arday things. It's just not that he was caught being a liar. It's just that you didn't believe his lies. So it's your fault for not believing his lies and his fantasist Walter Mitty lifestyle. But that's DEI, and we have that here. I'm getting to it, Martin. I'm getting to it. I just want to, last bit here on international news as well, and I've often mentioned it, and I just want to bring it to this tragic, and I've no way of corroborating it as well, but I believe that the post to be true as well. With the maid situation that's going on in in Canada, you know, maid is assisted suicide, essentially. It's murder by the machine. Is what it should be, and that's what it is. But it's the way that even when I read this story and I read you this part here, it just strikes me towards the end. It's the participation of the staff and nurses to coerce. There's another big account, Kayla Roddick, who has a big platform on the smaller social medias, Instagram and TikTok or whatever, who was disabled after the injection, and has a high profile as well, and has been offered maids in Canada, being Canadian, rather than any beneficial treatment for her, just the maids to end her life. But I just thought this was very tragic as well. And again, I do believe that this system here in our province here, behind enemy lines, in Sector 51, formerly known as the Republic of Ireland, is they want to bring this system in place in here. I think the first encroachment into that was you have to opt out of organ donation after an accident in that crease here, putting the onus in that if you don't opt out of organ donation, that you will be roped into the system's organ trafficking system, and they'll take what they want, what they need when they want it. But the legal framework is in place behind this as well over in in Canada, and I think this is a slow creep that's coming in over here as well. Lila Rose over on Twitter reports 83-year-old grandmother Bridget Stegman was euthanized against her will in Canada. She declined Maid, citing her Christian faith and her preference for a natural death. Her granddaughter and her primary caregiver was away on a 10-day vacation when the staff reportedly held private conversations with Bridget to convince her to die by lethal injection. They reportedly claimed she had agreed to be killed despite there being no evidence of her consent. On the day of her death, her family says she remained silent with her hands in her prayer position and did not give the final verbal confirmation they had been assured would be required. The injection proceeded anyway, and she was killed on July the 10th. Very sad and tragic. It just shows you how dark all of that gets, and how dark it is being as well, even with the great poisoning being unravelled before everybody's eyes. Still, it continues. But the rhetoric over here in Ireland as well. Now we're getting to the meat and the veg, and we're kind of summing up towards the end. I'm going to leave you off with the Tom Barry video as well, and that'll be our sign-off feature as well. And I'll give you a quick brief because I want to keep it short and concise, and hopefully we'll push it out there. Don't forget, as I greet you at this point, there are no sponsorships on the shows, nor do I ask for your support, nor do I care for your support. I just like spreading the news, spreading the word before it all comes crashing down or it's dramatically rescued. My preference is for the dramatic rescuing. I don't know where I was going with that, but anyway, yeah. What are the facts? Here we go. Let's jump in with it was Michael O'Keefe, big account, one of our strongest accounts over. I say our, his account is a big account, Michael O'Keefe, and he's done a little video montage there as well of the Eben Joseph situation, but the DEI insertion and how it works. And I kind of want to lead you off and finish off tonight's stream, short little stream of a Sunday service, keep it short and concise. Is to recognise it as I play it for you here now, what it is, who they are and how they play it and how it's used. The definition, which I brought up earlier on, asked a AI to describe it, which I think falls succinctly in place. And then a short video broadcast from Tom Barry at the end there to just finish it off about how long it's been going, when you recognise how long it's going, when people like himself were talking about it just a year before Ireland ascended into EEC. 1970, we joined the European Economic Bloc, which was a cooperation of nation states. But it was the likes of Tom Barry here that were talking towards the end. So like I said, just be prepared for a gradual sign-off towards the end of this string of thoughts here as well. But it more or less speaks and sort of explains itself as I go through it. So Michael O'Keefe over on Twitter says, when they tell you what they think of you, listen to them. They are all willing to deny the existence of an Irish as an ethnic group. Even though it's Britain in the European Union as a protective class, they are willing to deny the existence of the Irish as an ethnic group and claim our country belongs to everyone while demanding land and power. Where do you think this ends? I need you all to understand this is about more than just crime and pressure on public services. Your brains may not be ready to accept the fact that people want to take from you for no other reason than you are different from them. But it is happening. Ireland is a great little island with a predictable climate, no dangerous wildlife and a wealth of resources. Of course, people want to take it from us, and that's the entirety of human history, people taking from other people, and it hasn't stopped. It's happening in your country, your cities, your towns and village. Where do you think this ends? And in conclusion, not on conclusion, but I'll play the video there if you know that, collect it together. And you'll recognise it as I go through the further on after that as well. It'll bring it into frame. Sorry, again, lost the train of thought there, just looking in. Have a listen to this anyway.
Kids with land.
You guys have to think about it this way. This whole bloodline thing, that I'm not sure where this is coming from, where you want your generations and your bloodline to be pure and it belongs to the Irish.
I will interject in these as well, but it's the nonsensical ideas of this. It's the complete non-understanding and the recognition of biological facts, like certainty, biological facts. But it's this, and again, it plays into the useful idiots, and these are the useful idiots because it's an easy theology, or we'll frame it as a teleology, or it's an easy ideology for these class of people to perform in this performative circus without being connected to each other. That's what I want you to understand. There's not one great big organisation that feeds into it, but that these people, these type of people that espouse this rhetoric are connected in thought because they understand how the game plays, because the system will reward them for speaking like this. Not everybody of this class of people thinks like this, but hashtag not all doesn't qualify anymore because we have to think about self-preservation. So I am sympathetic, or not even that, I am empathetic to other people of certain types that are wrapped up and caught up in this performative industry. But this is about self-preservation of the distinct ethnic race of the Irish nation. And either all we are or what with useful idiots, they have all self-poisoned themselves and shall soon be enough out of the picture. We, the purebloods, I was trying to say to be non-super specific, will self-replicate and have to defeat this ideology. And it's only that these type of people, not the specific individual that's speaking or talking here now, but it's the framework that's in place for them because it's easy for them to grasp because of the common repetition of buzzwords and emotional blackmail.
There probably isn't such thing as an Irish person, but biologically speaking, because a lot of you guys will have a lot of different things mixed into your blood.
I know deep down I'm Irish.
A person
No, you're not.
looks at you, and then they'll give you that some stereotype joke, and you'll be like it's not a joke. It's something serious that you shouldn't be saying and everything. But then you'll get, but we're Irish. We like to joke around. We like to make a laugh out of something, and that needs to change within the Irish community.
Again, demanding that the host nation changes for them, that we change our way of life that has existed for thousands of years to accommodate them. And the cry, I am Irish, I was born here, denies biological and scientific geographical reality that no, you are not. A dog born in a stable does not make it a horse.
As much as I am Irish, that's the one thing that it kind of annoys me.
It should be to promote the well-being.
Now here I'm talking in, and we're going to lead into the tactics used by the useful idiots or the self-ascribed trained Marxists. This is BLM tactics. This is how this operates. But in the next three presentations, you'll see how the consistency and how they use it. And even though they haven't got a grasp of the language that they're trying to articulate in, they can use the tenets and try and use emotional blackmail to rouse people. And the useful clowns, I'm not racist, and around them to cheer them on and back them in, thinking, I'm virtuous, I'm with you, I'm not more racist. Check this out.
Of every resident in Ireland, be it black, be it Lebanese, be it Indian, be it Nigerian, be it Ghanaian, from wherever they all come from. Together, let's say yes to a diverse Ireland.
No.
Together, let's say yes to an inclusive Ireland.
No.
Together, let's say yes to Ireland is for everyone.
Ireland is for the Irish.
Do I have a witness? Now let's say yes.
Now, this last pose here as well, I think, is pivotal. You'll see it time and time again, and that's how they self-recognise themselves. It's the fist in the air, which is common Marxist, it's his left wing, it's his communism. So they self-identify with the fist pump. And the useful Irish idiots go, yeah, Nelson Mandela was king. He was a fucking human pedo trafficking scumbag.
It's a big yes to an inclusive Ireland.
So was Mahatma Gandhi, and we've got plenty of our own terrorists like that as well. Anyway.
A big yes to Ireland is for everyone. And a big yes to migrants because they are welcome and they are here to stay. Thank you very much.
A lot of white people in Ireland are not actually racist. What some of you lack, or what a lot of you lack,
this, all right, this pure projection, and
is self-awareness. You lack that ability to pull the brakes on what comes out of your mouth. Perhaps because you're carried away or because of your personal bias. I really cannot tell.
Honestly, in our CSO, it says that, we cannot say that, Ireland is changing. We have changed. It is already a multicultural country. I keep saying that we are not going to undo it. We can't go back to.
Teaching is a very closed profession. It's for, white, middle class women, basically, who are Catholic.
So say we're going.
Here's Professor Marbles, as I like to describe it as well, because this is completely, well, how did you frame it? Gaslit, not even gaslit. This is completely propped up and framed and put into position. Even the professorship. This is our equivalent to Jason R. Day. This is the same situation. Someone who will reveal themselves in their own incompetence over in time, because there are many voices and minds constructing and keeping this narrative in place. Even the YouTube channel, even with the paltry numbers that we get here, we still surpass Professor Mumbles here, or Professor Marbles. In the same breath, because it's completely constructed to push manufactured consent. But her buzzwords fall in place with the trained activists, because these are easy tenants for them to take advantage. She's only won the lottery because she was in a specific place at a specific time and was a useful patsy or idiot at the time to drive a narrative, and has now been elevated, like Professor Ho Chi Minh, who was Dublin mayor there for a time, who's not a professor either. But you know who I'm talking about.
To be looking at a topic that is far overdue.
Far overdue. You white people have not reflected on what you have done to the black man.
And it's called the white person syndrome. You know, it's a topic that can be challenging.
It is not black supremacy. It is you who must fall to the knee of the black supremacy.
Sometimes, but it's a topic that I think that we really need to look at. Because one of the things we talk about in inclusion, we say make space, don't take space. However, you know, when we look at the numbers of ethnic minorities, you know, there's not enough to take those spaces if, you know, so we do still need...
What? What? Sorry? But that even in that confusion, it's the simplicity and the repetition. It don't take spaces, you make spaces, you know, but again, positivity, emotional drive, urgency.
Say like the civil rights movement worked because...
What fucking civil rights movement did we have here? We had no civil rights, and that's an American phenomenon. So you're trying to mix mashing two different histories that have no relevance here in an Irish context, because that's exactly where you are. Anyway.
Black, white.
Sorry, last bit. Just this little bit there grips me, because there's no concept or can't go anything out of the framework. It goes black, white, green, blue, yellow. Doesn't mean anything. It's the rainbow colours magic.
Green, blue, yellow. Everybody came together to make it work. So I argue that I didn't create racism, so it's your job to fix it.
We need equity. And the beginning of equity or anything around equality begins with land. We need to own.
We need to own land. See, to construct that, because the only way you gain power or to ascend power through the old system, even in capitalist system, is you have to be a landowner to vote. Land and land acquisition is power. But these people come here and saying that they must be, and aren't being. I will say this now while it's on my frame of mind, because I'm drastically aware of it, that our system bequeaths these amounts of benefits and access to systems that we cannot gain access to ourselves, even as tax-paying citizens, you know, have to jump through the performative hoops to get like medical attention or whatever. It's a complete disaster down there. But these are given priority and elevated. And the reason for that elevation, and I mean elevation through, because they come from the depths of, they say, the poverty, and that because we... as a society, not even just as a class, because we should be automatically be presumed as being white, indigenous, Irish, but they won't frame it just as white because it's too much of a collective. But that these people must be acclimated or brought up to a level that is on par with us. So at the deprivation of our own subsistence, our own way of life, that the tax burden must be increased so that these people are elevated and given that financial system. So it's a 2-for-1. We pay double the tax so that these people can be elevated, given cheap access to cheap credit lines for cars, 16, 17, to be driving around on taxi plates when there's no way that the performative monkey that was involved in a crash there just before the weekend should have got a taxi driver's license, because English is not even the first language and the back streets aren't known here, so it's just a Google taxi driver. But they're all going to be replaced by Uber drivers or automated driving and self-drive cars. So what then? What are they going to do here but be just another more burden on the welfare system? But that's that cheap access to drive, and it's drive to elevate them at our cost, at the indigenous cost, that is driving the disparity and will drive to the civil war that's now being proposed or being spoken about. Let me jump off here, but it's that acquisition of power, and it's the trained Marxists. It's all the usual activists you can see of the same group that profess this, because it's easy for them to gain power. if they are successful in it.
Land. We need to own property. We need to own businesses. And until we have that equity,
you are not being impinged or stopped. In fact, you're given every benefit to open up a business and acquire land here through the taxpayer, through the revenue, where even if you gain a mortgage here, if you come from a certain religion or ideology, you do not have to pay interest on that mortgage. So even those privately held houses that seem to be taken up, they are not paying the same mortgage rates that you are, and revenue in the system has set it up to allow those ideologies, because it's against their religion, to participate in usury. But you, Christian, you Catholic, you dumb atheist, you useful idiot, will pay the maximum. Will pay the maximum taxation. So it's that two-tier and this false equivocation and this elevation of people that didn't gain it on meritocracy. There's nothing stopping each and any one of them from starting up a business, operating and employing people. Even with the government assistance, they can't maintain it. All the little franchises that pop open here, that for 50 or 60 grand, if you start a new business, only open to the parish, not to the indigenous Irish. 50 or 60 odd vape shops, hairdressing shops opening to boot, that they change their identity numerous times, and they take 4, 5 of these little 50, 60 grand purchases and stuff their pockets, or send it overseas and send it back home, because there's no accountability, because it's what they want. It's that partition and pushing of money.
We will have power, and then we move towards political power.
That to me is treason. That's like a usurpation. It's like language to talk about an invasion. That's like we're to take over, but we'll do it the slow way. And it works in tandem with the Islamic way, because that's the same Islamic tactic and how they will do it. We will slowly insert ourselves. We will befriend ourselves to the infidel. And then when we become the majority, then we will instigate our own rules and our own laws and our own way of life till they are no more. Till they are no more. Let me get rid of this. Well, you know, I'm just getting it off my chest. I know you're all particularly well aware of it. And again, 52 minutes. I think we're coming in closer to the end. I think it's a very well rounded off stream. I want to thank you, before I sign off and let you go, for your participation in tonight's disquisition. But I just finished up with a little bit of this before the broadcast. I was asking one of the AI agents, what are the tactics of the trained Marxists, and what is the rhetoric they use when out agitating? As you've seen in that short video stream, ties in here with the explanation. Trained Marxist is not a standardised. Now, I want you to kind of grasp this and understand it, those of you that are particularly are new to it as well, but it's repeatable, and you'll see it time and time again. And when you recognise it yourself, you'll be able to push back at it. You'll be able to dismantle its emotional blackmail, its ascendancy to gain moral authority when none is there to be gained. So you should be able to push back on it. Trained Marxist is not a standardised professional category. If you mean Patrice Coulo's 2015 description of herself and Alicia Gaza said that they were trained organisers with a Marxist ideology frame. That was the two women that started off the Black Lives Matter, who spent all their money for themselves and didn't give it to other black people. Not that every Black Lives Matter participant or supporter was Marxist. Tactics traditionally associated with Marxist organising. Historical Marxist-Leninist organising distinguishes, number one, propaganda, teaching a broader analysis, class, wealth, power, institutions, and proposed alternatives to smaller or more committed audiences, as you see in there in that last bit of that broadcast. Agitation, using one concrete, emotionally resonant grievance to move a large audience towards specific action. There's not enough houses, there's not enough black people in power, like specific reasons that they think that will resonate with the general public to move the needle. Towards specific actions such as joining a meeting, signing, striking, donating or protesting. Organisation, converting sympathy into durable groups, local chapters, tenants, worker groups, coalitions, training, leadership development and coordinated campaigns. Political framing, connecting a particular problem, for example policing, wages, housing or healthcare, to a systemic account of power and inequality. This propaganda versus agitation distinction is historically associated with Plekhanov and Lenin. Many ideas for smaller groups versus one focused idea for a larger crowd. Rhetoric used while agitating. Effective political agitators of many ideologies, not uniquely Marxists, often use rhetoric such as concrete stories rather than abstractions. And I don't think I'm falling into projection here or falling foul of this trap either. Rather than abstractions, a wage theft case, an eviction, a death, or an unaffordable bill. Moral contrast, setting wealth or official promises against hardship. They say there is prosperity, but why can't people afford rent? Plain, repeatable slogans, a short claim that makes the desired action memorable. Us language, portraying affected people as a collective with shared interests and the capacity to act. It's all our islands. It is for everyone. It is for all of us to embrace. And those evil bad people that would deny you that, they're the bad people and we are the good guys. Moral authority, emotional manipulation. In the historical Leninist account, agitation deliberately emphasises the emotional and immediate dimensions of a grievance to arouse indignation and action that can be persuasive, but it also can oversimplify complex issues or drift into manipulative messaging. And even all those talking heads in RTA, all of them of certain groups fall into the same language because it's easy for them to use and understand, hence the low IQ thesis, but let's not go down that track. But that it's, as I said, it overly simplifies complex issues. It oversimplifies complex issues or drifts into manipulating messages. Important limits. It would be inaccurate to assume that Marxists or people attending a protest use a single script to seek violence or are all part of one centrally directed movement. Curoris herself said that the aim, get this is pivotal now to sign off on, the aim was that a movement was usable by many black people and said that they did not seek to be its vanguard. Independent reporting also notes that a broader movement supports do not necessarily share its foundation's ideologies. I'm sorry, Irish, I have to put it on. If it keeps popping in and out, I'd switch it off. But there's no super chats, there's no support. You know, man's got to put the lights on. That's why I was doing the backstroke last week. But yeah, look, I'll finish off on that. My apologies for that. But again, just that kind of language, it's easily disseminated, it's easily deconstructed as well and pushed by, but it's recognisable. And you can play it back or you can push back in it if you're in the proximity of it, or you can explain it to others as well that it's a useful idiot's tactic to use emotional manipulation, but that the system will drive it and amplify it as RTE do and any other mainstream nuisances that are out there, the Vici prostitutes that are out there. All right, chat. Shane has been sitting there by himself. Shane, are you jumping in? I don't think I will. Do you want to say, Anne? You're the only one over there on Telegram, so we'll leave it be. There's no hands up. Phew. We had Catherine in there the other week there as well. She was pumping out all sorts of things. The legal ramifications of opening up the lines. So I do apologise for the ads if they're intrusive. Some never guess, like I'm on subscription, so I don't get to see them, you know. But a portent of that will come my way. So with that, my friends, I'm going to leave you with this video of Tom Barry, and then at the end of it, the stream will end. So I will sign off with you this evening. Thanks for jumping in for this short little broadcast. Thanks for your companionship and all your kind words in the comment section. Don't forget to leave your thoughts, comments and witticisms in the comment section after the fact, and share this message if it is, or share the stream if you could, if you think it's of any use or of any value. Good to see Sheepdog just joined into the house. I did mention earlier on at the end, and the wrenches just come in at the end of the show. Wrenches, when there was a Paul O'Neill, well, that wasn't Paul, there was a whole. You've got to be so careful with your language, and I'm going to hide that one as well. You've got to moderate anyone out there. If you go back through the messages, Sheepdog or Fanula, any of that rhetoric, and particularly that account that I block them accounts as well for me, please, because that was just utter nonsense they were trying to push up on the screen. And I make no attachment for other people's pontifications in the chat section. That's their own unique positions. Okay, boys and girls, so I'll leave it this, just to frame out that the people of this merit and people of this ilk had already recognised and listened to his language and recognised the time, 1969, recognised the person who he was and how they recognised the kind of danger of taking foreign investment, foreign funds, foreign credit lines. I remind you, and I remember this from the treaty days, back in the days, that Collins et al. Were reminded not to take American credit lines because it would rope them in, which is what FDI essentially is, foreign direct investment, which Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil and everything promised and pushed out to us would be a benefit, but it's only just cheap credit till they sold every asset in the island, even as our headstones are being trashed, historical monuments being destroyed. It's the same old tactics. You see it happening in Europe. Don't say it's just a pleasant surprise. We all know who it is, but nobody's got their kahunas on mainstream to speak up and talk about it because it's a closed circuit, because it's just an echo chamber. I get it. But we'll keep speaking about it amongst ourselves, and we'll keep pushing out the narrative, because we all know who the fuck it is, and we all know what it's about against, and it ain't going to happen, because the return to Christ and return to Christianity is an assured, is on the ascendancy. Boys and girls, I'll leave you with this. I'll stop waffling and talking shit. See you possibly on next Saturday, maybe next Sunday, seeing how things go. Appreciate you for jumping by. Thank you, Karen. Thank you to the Americans. Thank you to Stargirl D, if you're over there. Martin, Shawnee Mack, Paul O'Neill. Paulie being out of order tonight, but I do recognise the name. Martin, Karen Burns, I said. Jane Doe also in the house. Sheepdog from Manon. Fanula, thank you for moderating. Thank you for jumping in late. Moderating late, I should say to you all. Have a good week. Have a good week, and I'll see you at the end of next week, and we'll touch base there again. God bless you. God bless yours. Us, everybody.
Fellas, keep our own people in Ireland is that the whole best part of the country is that we go over to foreigners and.
Sorry, I just want to cut across this. I want to cut across this quickly. Just use this as remember who you are. Remember who these people are, and that this age-old tactic has always been recognised and defeated. We have defeated it and pushed it back. But when enough of us recognise the true enemies, that this is decades in the making, this is decades and decades coming to making, and will take decades to unwind, but we have to keep pushing back because these good, excuse me, I'm not getting emotional, it's just a cough. These good people recognise the same threat that we recognise here today.
And wrenches and that kind of thing. And that was certainly nothing that we visualised. We do not purport now at our age to tell anybody or any group of people or Darlene or anybody else. But the fact is that we're worried about it, that if this country is to go back to the days of the privileged classes and the big landlords and the big industrialists, and that if our people are always to be living in foreign countries and living in cities under conditions where, which aren't indeed very nice. But we people think that most of our businesses go along any place in Cork City now, and every week there's some place taken over by the foreigners. In the same way, you find in the country, in the best parts of the country, that every foreigner, British, American and German and everybody else, they're coming in here and they're buying up land. And that is something that should be stopped, and if it isn't stopped, I foresee in a very short time, because we can't talk for very many years, I foresee serious trouble. That the attitude of mind, and take for instance tourism. I know tourism is a factor in any country. But if tourism is to mean that all our people will only get employed here as waiters and porters and waitresses and chambermaids, then that isn't the island.